In the previous video, we looked at creating drop-down menus, and this was possible by controlling the data that was entered into the range of cells. In this video, we're going to expand on this and look at data validation as a whole and how it can be used to validate different types of data being entered, and, as we saw before, make it easier for the user to enter the data. Here we have a simple table where I want to record the hours worked by teachers on different dates. I want to make sure a date is entered in the date column. Select the cells you want to add the data validation to. Right-click and click View More Cell Actions and select Data Validation. This opens the Data Validation Rules sidebar, where we need to set the rules we want the data in the range we've just selected to follow. Click Add Rule. By default, it'll add drop-down menus, as we saw in the previous video. Click on the drop-down menu below Criteria, then select Is Valid Date from the list. If they do enter something wrong, we can set up a help message by ticking Show Help Text for a selected cell, which will tell them what they need to input. Tick the Show Validation Help Text and you'll see a default message related to the criteria below. You can edit it if you want. Next, we can set what happens if the user inputs something that isn't a date. There are two choices. Either we can show a warning in the cell, or we can make it impossible for them to enter something other than a date by rejecting the input and displaying a message. For now, let's leave it on Show a Warning. Then click the Done button at the bottom of the screen. On the sheet, we can see that we can enter a date with no problems, but when we enter something like the number 2, we get a red triangle in the cell, warning us it doesn't meet the criteria. Hovering over the cell, we can see the help message. We can also set other criteria for dates. From the criteria menu on the sidebar, click on Is Valid Date, and you will see a whole range of criteria we can set for cells to meet. As you can see, we can set the criteria to be a certain date, or to be before or after certain dates, etc. When we add the Is Valid Date option, when we double-click on a cell with it applied, a small calendar appears where we can select a date from, making it much easier and quicker to enter dates. This time, let's make sure the hours inputted in the hours column are between 0 and 24. Select the range, right-click, and select Data Validation from the menu as before, and click Add Rule from the sidebar. This time, choose Is Between from the criteria list. This will invite you to add the two values you want the numbers to be between. Enter the range we want, i.e. 0 to 24. This time we're going to reject any input that isn't between 0 and 24. So select Reject the input. Set up the help text by ticking Show Help Text for a selected cell. Again, the default is fine. I've typed in 24 with no problems, but when I try to type in 25, nothing is entered in the cell, and it displays an error message along with the help message. We end up with the table we want, with the data in the format we need it in, whilst preventing mistakes. On the sidebar, we can clearly see what data validation rules we've set up so far and in which cells they are applied to. We can also use data validation to make sure emails and URLs are valid, and to make sure certain text formats are entered in the cells. Some people get scared off by the name and think it's something technical and difficult, but as we have seen, it's easy to use and can make sure the right data is entered into the sheet.